Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. Geeky Adams here, and it's nice to have you around once more. I want to say thank you for watching my previous videos. The feedbacks were massive and highly appreciated. And if you're watching my video for the first time, you are highly welcome as well. On this channel, I share my experiences as a software engineer, career tips, and sometimes general lifestyle vlogs. Today in this video, I'll be sharing my full experience of interviewing with Amazon for a senior front-end engineer 3 role, how it all started, to pass through all the interview stages and loops, and the lessons learned, and also I'll be sharing tips that can help you ace technical interviews at this scale. If you would also like to know if I finally got the job offer, I guess you have to watch through to the end of the video. This video is a bit lengthy and I did section it into different chapters, so you can go ahead and over on the timeline or navigate the timestamps in the description below to easily skip chapters if you need to. Without further delay, let's dive right in. So a couple of months back, specifically in early February this year, I randomly got an email from an Amazon recruiter introducing himself and what he does at Amazon. Then he went on to tell me about an open role he would love to speak to me about. At this point, I had to first confirm the email source to make sure it was really coming from Amazon because, it was surprising. The reason why it felt surprising and impressive was mainly that the resume screening is usually the first and critical stage for interviewing with a company like Amazon. To put in context, a lot of people who apply for jobs at FAANG companies such as Amazon do not even make it past the resume screening stage. So to think that I didn't even apply and I already skilled that was pretty impressive. By the way, I still didn't know how he got my profile in the first place, probably from a talent sourcer or whatever. At that point, I didn't care too much about that info. So if you want to see me review the resume that got me this opportunity at Amazon and also at Google, to interview at Google, turn on the notification bell so I know when I drop a video on that. Moving on, the next phase was the screening call. This is usually with the technical recruiter or an HR member. In my case, my recruiter set up a schedule for the screening call with him based on my availability, and this call happened around 1 week later. Now, the screening call was more of my recruiter getting to tell me about the role. Apparently, I was going to be working on a greenfield project, which sounded quite interesting to me. Then he went ahead to ask a series of questions, trying to get an in-depth overview of my technical abilities and assess my communication skills, motivation, work attitude, and overall personality. Additionally, part of the questions asked were related to interest. For example, why I would want to work for a company like Amazon. And then at the end, my base salary expectation, which I really tried my best to avoid, but ended up giving a figure based on some Amazon compensation data I've seen on levels.fyi, while also stating it clearly that I'm more interested in scaling the interview stages first, and this figure would most likely change based on some future factors. At the end of this discussion, my recruiter was pretty much confident in me and thought that I'm a good fit for the role and fit to be an Amazonian. He went on to assure me that I will be, progressing to the next stage, and also assured me of doing everything in his power that will increase my chances of getting into Amazon. I think he really did believe in me, even though this is kind of expected of recruiters, because it would be a plus for them as well if their candidate ends up landing a role at the company. Later that same day, I got an email from the Amazon recruiting coordinator for this role, basically saying the team would like to move even further with my application, and then requested that I schedule my availability for the next stage of the interview process, which in my own case was the technical phone interview stage. I went on to schedule this technical phone interview 2 weeks away from getting the email so I could get enough chance to adequately prepare. A week before my scheduled technical phone interview, my recruiter sent me the meeting invite for the session, along with some materials to help me prepare for this interview stage. To be honest, the materials were too much to consume in just a week, so I narrowed down my focus to solving algorithm questions that are related to and could be applied to front-end as a stack, because it felt like that was a pattern used based on what I've read online from people who had previously gone through the process. I also practiced a few leadership and behavioral questions, which is a very critical part of Amazon interview. How it is preferred to be answered using the STAR method, which is basically an acronym for situation, task, action, and results. Also, some front-end architectural questions too. One good thing about interviews at Amazon specifically is that even though experiences and interview questions are going to be different for everybody, it still follows a common pattern. This makes it easy for first-timers to have an idea of what to expect, and also increases your chances of landing a role if you've ever gone through the process before as well. A day before my technical phone interview, I got another call from my recruiter basically asking me if I was, ready for the interview, and also to cheer me up and lift my spirits. I think it helps me a lot having someone genuinely believe in me and, make me feel very qualified. Moving forward, the day for my technical phone interview finally came. It was held via Amazon Chime, which is basically Amazon versions of Google Meet or Google Hangouts. However, this stage didn't require me to share my video, so it was entirely and basically just audio based. The session started out with the interviewer introducing himself and also me introducing myself and giving an overview of my technical and work background. And also what I'm looking forward to going forward, very important to add. Then onto the real interview, which comprised of a leadership and behavioral question, a live coding question, and some web niche questions such as, for example, different ways to create objects in JavaScript, questions about CSS grid system, web optimization, and the likes. For the LP, I'll be using LP as leadership here, leadership principles. So for the LP questions, I think it was about a time when I started the project from scratch and how I handled it. I can't really remember. For the live coding session, I was given like three questions to create a valid HTML template from a data tree. It was pretty easy for me to solve because I had already helped a friend solve something like that in the past, and I also was able to communicate well enough to get into where I was making mistakes. It is very crucial to communicate your solution to interviewers, as they are very much interested in your thought process as much as they are interested in the solution to whatever problem you're given. So that went by like that. The day after, my recruiter called me to check how the interview went for me and also to keep me checked. Then the following day, he called me again to give me the news of the result of my technical phone interview. I had passed and would be moving on to the next stage and final stage of the interview process. I could see the joy in his face, clapping over the video call and saying he got the report that I performed exceptionally. At this point, I was super elated because according to him and the things I've read online, only about 1 in 100 people who apply to Amazon make it past this stage onto the final on-site interview stage. It was a happy moment for me, even though I didn't quite show it, knowing fully well that I still have even bigger battles ahead of me. So that was it for the phone interview. For some people, they may need to go through additional stages of the interview process, such as online assessments or writing tests, depending on the role they are interviewing for. Anyways, a few moments after this update call, I got an email from my recruiter congratulating me again and also introducing me to other members of the extended recruiting team. The recruiting coordinator would later coordinate my final on-site interview, the schedules, and the relating logistics. The other person was the client lead and global technical recruiter, whose duty was to prep me for the interview and for the final interview, and also act as an intermediary between me and the hiring team. Later that same day, I got another email from the recruiting coordinator congratulating me on moving on to the final stage and also asking me to schedule my availability for the on-site interview. It took me about 3 days or so to respond to this email to help me better decide and choose my availability so that I could have time to prepare very well. I ended up scheduling my final interview for a bit more than 3 weeks away. This gave me the chance to prepare well. More so, I was also interviewing with my current company at that time, so I needed a whole lot of time. Between the periods before my scheduled on-site interview dates, I had scheduled a prep call with the extended technical recruiter where I was given tips on what to expect in the on-site interview, the interviewers that are likely to take each session, and the specific leadership principles expected to be handled by each interviewer. Pretty much insights to help me get prepared. Now, 2 weeks before my on-site interview date, I got a confirmation email from the for the interview schedule and also a non-disclosure agreement that I had to sign, which prevents me from sharing the details of the final interview with anyone. So going forward from here, I will only give an overview of how the process went, as I'm not allowed to share details. Normally, on-site interviews are meant to be done in physical offices with teams you will be joining. But I think since the lockdown, companies have adopted virtual on-site interviews, and that was exactly how mine was done. Virtual. The on-site interview loop, in my case, and for most people, consists of 5 different interviews with 5 different interviewers and maybe a candid chat if you signed up for it. 4 of the 5 interviews are folks from the team, giving the last person as the bar raiser. I'll talk about that later, or you can simply check who an Amazon bar raiser is online if you care. Another thing to note, you are allowed to split your final interview loop into 2 consecutive days so it doesn't get overwhelming if you want to. I did split mine into 2 consecutive days, but because of some logistic problems, some of the interviews had to be rescheduled and mine ended up spanning 5 consecutive work days. Like 5 consecutive work days, that is like tough. The day of my first interview loop finally came. I had prepared hard by solving a lot of data structure and algorithm questions suited to Amazon software development engineering interviews, some OOP questions, and a lot of leadership and behavioral questions. Let me tell you this, nothing is going to prepare you enough. You just have to do or practice as much as you can, especially for the LP questions. For clarification, Amazon has this thing called leadership principles with which they evaluate their candidates and employees with. And it is the bedrock of how they operate. For Amazon, it is 14 in number. Some other companies have something related as well. For example, it's called Googliness at Google. You can read more on behavioral interviews at FAANG if you want to get more details on that. Moving on, because of the role I was interviewing for, I had also prepared by practicing web tasks with vanilla JS, such as writing Sudoku and tic-tac-toe games, building custom carousels, and some other web and front-end related stuff. I also did some system design practice by watching a couple of demo system design interviews on YouTube, and also attempted some myself, even though I put the least energy into this part. I have linked in the description below some of the very useful resources I prepared with. At this point, I was pretty confident and ready to take on the challenge. For the first loop, I was supposed to have 3 interviews on that day, but 2 of them were postponed. Ended up having just 1 interview for the first loop. My first interview went pretty well. I got to answer 2 LP questions relating to ownership and think big Amazon leadership principles. With follow-up questions, then I got to do 1 live data structure coding question applied to the front end. It was basically about taking nested data tree and creating an HTML template node from it, and I was able to easily solve it in time. Well, mostly because it was a bit related to the kind of question I had solved in my technical phone interview previously. Coincidentally, it was also taken by the same interviewer as my technical phone interview. However, I did struggle to articulate my responses to the LP questions I asked, leading to so many follow-up questions for clarity, but I think I did pretty decent still. Going forward for the next set of my interviews, I resolved to take some seconds to think and choose a befitting scenario for the LP questions, jot down my thoughts, and then deliver my responses based on what I've jotted down. It helped a lot, and I had killed every other LP and behavioral question after. The following day, I had a candid chat session, which was just someone coming to talk to me about Amazon culture, especially relating to Black employees. Well, because I signed up for it, then I had my next set of interviews from the loop immediately after the candid chat session. These were 2 back-to-back interviews. The first one was a bar raiser interview, where I was asked 3 LP questions relating to bias for action, have backbone, disagree and commit, and write a lot Amazon leadership principles. A bar raiser is someone outside the team who interviews candidates on non-technical LP and behavioral questions with the goal of raising the bar of employees at Amazon. For you to pass a bar raiser interview, they must perceive you from your answers to be better than 50% of the current Amazon employees of the same discipline as you. Typically, the bar raiser has the veto power over all hiring decisions made by every other interviewer, including the hiring manager, making the bar raiser interview one of the most important parts of the interview loop. My third interview was the second one for that day, which was a system design interview with the hiring manager. The interviewer introduced himself and also had me do a short intro of myself too. This is quite common for all interviewers, along with asking 2 LP questions. For this part of the interview, the LP questions I answered were relating to insisting on the highest standard and trust Amazon leadership principles. Next was a system design session. By this time, I was only having 20 minutes left out of my allotted 1 hour for this particular interview session, which was kind of not enough for a system design session. This was partly due to the time spent on introduction and follow-up questions asked in my response to the LP questions. One thing about the interview loop you should note is timing. Timing is quite strict in FAANG interviews, and whatever happens during the interview that shortens your ability to be able to conclude your solution in time will be considered totally your fault. For example, having internet issue, muting your mic unknowingly, or the interviewer giving too many follow-up questions while still having more important problems to go. For the system design session, I was expecting a problem statement and me getting to design the system from scratch myself. But what happened was that I was presented a PDF of UI designs of an app and was asked to discuss the system design and implementation through. Because it was a virtual interview, I wasn't expected to illustrate my solution, nor was I given any tool to do so. This definitely made it a tad bit harder to convey my thoughts. I went on to ask my interviewer if I should take it from the consumer end or the business end, and also if he was expecting a high level or low level design because of timing. He replied by asking me to architect the solution from both the consumer perspective and also the business perspective, and also do a mid-tier design instead, and this threw me off guard a little. The product I was asked to architect and design was kind of ambiguous as well, model-wise, so I spent most of the time making clarifications that I barely had time to actually discuss the real implementation deeply. At the end of the session, seeing the frustration in my breath, my interviewer acknowledged the fact that he knows 20 minutes wasn't enough to dissect the problem, and I shouldn't worry too much. I wasn't confident in this round of the interview like the others. I just accepted and moved on to prepare for the last 2 rounds that were earlier postponed to the coming week. The week came and I did the last 2 rounds of the interview loop. Both had live coding sessions. For the first one in that week, which was my 4th interview round out of the total loop, I was asked 2 LP questions relating to customer obsession and learn and be curious Amazon LPs, which I answered excellently. Then I went on to solve a code challenge relating to the front end. I was asked to come up with a data structure and code up a dynamic hierarchical folder file system view and logic such as that you have in a code editor. For example, using any framework of my choice, framework or any framework syntax of my choice, or just go vanilla. I went on to write it in Vue and also discussed how I would have approached it using vanilla JavaScript as well. For the 5th and final round of the entire on-site interview loop, I was asked 2 LP questions under the deliver results and dive deep Amazon LPs, followed by a live coding question, which I did greatly on as well. And that concludes my entire interview process for this role at Amazon. A few moments later, I got an email from my recruiter stating to expect the result of my interview in 5 business days, which is typical. Those 5 days will turn out to be the most worrisome days I've had in a while. I couldn't wait to hear my results. What happens if I don't get an offer? What happens if I get an offer and I'm not ready to take on this level of role or relocate at this point in my life? So much uncertainty. The results waiting period could take longer for some people if there happens to be a logistic issue, for example. I've also heard of cases where they don't get back if you perform badly or failed, but I think they try to get back to as much people as candidates as they could. 5 business days later, I got an email from my technical recruiter for us to schedule a call and discuss the results of my interview. I scheduled the call for the same day because I couldn't wait to be put out of my misery. Now the results. Typically, they just break the news to you if you passed or failed without much detail into the parts you did well in or what parts you didn't do too well in. But for some reason, mine was different. She went on to let me know that out of the five rounds of my final interview, the hiring team thought I performed greatly in all of my coding interviews and all my leadership principles and behavioral interviews with no issues whatsoever. However, they had reservations about my system design and scalability knowledge, which they thought I didn't do well in. Because of this, and how important it is to this role I interviewed for, and the risk factors attached to it, they will not be giving me an offer, unfortunately. She then wished me good luck going forward and also, made it known that I will typically only be able to apply back to Amazon after 6 to 12 months. It is worth noting that the result of an Amazon interview could fall into either of these three categories: higher, no higher, or higher in another position, depending on how well you perform. If you check the majority of the boxes with a very low risk factor, you fall into the higher class. If you present unmanageable risk factor or didn't perform impressively nor raise the bar, you get a no higher. And if you perform impressively and raise the bar but have a little bit of risk factors that could be mitigated or might not be important to other roles, you might get a higher in another position, given that there is an open position that matches your skill set and performance. To be very honest, it was even during this call I got to know I was actually interviewing for a senior software development engineer 3 role, and I couldn't be prouder of myself for what I was able to pull off. Yet, yes, I was a bit disappointed that just one poor performance hindered my ability to get an offer, but I was even more grateful for having had the opportunity to interview for such a role, made it to the last stage, and performed greatly as well. Here comes a twist to the situation. The following day, my original recruiter set up a call with me to also analyze the result of my interview with me. Even though I couldn't get an offer, he was very proud of me and my performance. Then he informed me that because of how well I performed, the hiring manager and the bar raiser made a case for me to be put up for another role. Again, hearing this, I became very proud of myself. He then went ahead to send me the role and asked me to apply to it immediately. It's a Frontend Engineer 2, that is Software Development Engineer 2 role in Texas, which is very much a fit for my level, I won't lie, or even above, considering that I'm a new graduate. He also said he was going to forward the results of my recent interview to the hiring team for that new role. Now, I don't know if I'm going to have an additional interview round or not. I have my fingers crossed on that, and if anything interesting comes up, I will try to share it with you guys as well. If not, then that will be it. Now, here are my key takeaways from my interview experience for the senior SDE 3 role at Amazon. Firstly, I now have more respect for people who make it into this kind of companies, especially at senior levels. It is not easy to check all the boxes and get hired. The interview preparation process alone is very daunting and stressful, as there are too many things to consume and practice at once with limited time. This process also made me more confident in my abilities to interview, especially at such a level, both technically and otherwise. Your recruiters are your best friends. Appreciate them. They pretty much want you to get the job even more than you yourself want to. Also, I realized how important it is to give shots at opportunities even when you don't think you're ready for them. When I got the opportunity to interview for this role, I just concluded my final exams at uni, and I wasn't even sure if I was ready to make such a big move, or even if I can even pull this kind of interview off. But then I had nothing to lose, and I'm really happy I didn't shy away from it and gave it all my best. The process opened my eyes to a lot of possibilities, and I also got to learn a lot during my preparation and also from the people I met along the way as well. Lastly, you can definitely do anything you want as long as you put your mind into it. Finally, here are some tips I believe could help you ace technical interviews, especially at FAANG. You don't want to go into interviews without having a proper preparation plan. In my case, I made a plan to solve and make sure to understand at least 2 medium to hard lead code questions per day, giving priority to problems that are known to be asked at Amazon and other FAANG companies. Practice leadership and behavioral questions, do some system designs, and read many web architecture articles. This gave me a lot of confidence going into the interviews and helps me get less nervous. Trust me, it's not easy at all, but it helps. I would link below in the description resources that helped me prepare for my interview, because it might help you or help others. 2. Go into interviews with the mindset of going to express yourself and your abilities, learn new stuff, and also get to teach new stuff instead of seeing it as a battle. This mindset would help you get less intimidated, help you avoid being too serious, and create a friendly ambience between you and your interviewers. 3. Communication is everything, so you better work on it. Be able to communicate your thoughts during interviews and clear up as much ambiguity as possible. During one of my coding interviews, I was making little mistakes somewhere and the interviewer was able to guide me back on track, only because I was communicating my thoughts as I was solving the problem. 4. Don't just jump into solving a problem or answering any question without fully understanding it. Ask as many questions as you possibly need. Your interviewers are always happy to clarify things for you. You should always have a jotter by your side to jot down your thoughts before delivering responses. It will help you save a lot of mistakes and a lot of "had I known I would have answered a certain way." 5. Learn the art of time management. When preparing for interviews, race yourself against time. This will help you get more comfortable with solving problems in a limited time. 6. Don't be an asshole. Be super kind to everyone you meet along the way. How you come across personality-wise goes a long way into determining your interview experience and your chances of having a good time. Show interest in the role by asking your interviewers questions about the company, could be about the culture, their own personal experiences, and whatnot. This can come in handy when making hiring decisions and also help you decide if it's a team you really want to be part of. Yeah, that's it. On the good side, I'm very grateful for the experience. More so, I had also accepted an offer from another company I was interviewing with at the same time too. I feel like there is so much to learn here, industry and tech-wise, and I love the whole culture at my new company and the flexibility it comes with. I also have a Google interview process scheduled for a couple of months away. I'm very grateful for all of these opportunities. I'm also very thankful to my circle of friends who supported me through the process by boosting my morale, helping me prepare, listening to me rant, helping with gadgets to make the experience better for me, and also to a special someone for standing solid by me during these busy times. I also appreciate you for taking your time to watch this video. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, now will be a better time to do so, as there are loads of interesting content coming up on this channel. So hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and do well to share this video as well. You might just be changing someone's life by doing that. If you want to reach out to me, book a tech or career session with me, or support the journey, please do connect via the contact links I left in the description below as well. It's been an awesome talk so far, and until we meet again, I remain Abdulhakeem Adams, and this is Geeky Adams. Bye.